A licensed psychologist, Dr. Sharon Gopaul McNicol has dedicated her professional life to eradicating poverty and crime and empowering grassroots communities.
I would say I'm pretty much a national girl. They used to call me in St. Joseph a daughter of the soil.
With an insatiable appetite for learning, by age 27, Sharon had obtained a bachelor's degree, 3 masters, and a doctorate. Sharon's thirst for education and passion for lobbying stems from the early influence of her parents. Her father founded and led one of the earliest unions representing teachers, and her mother later became its first female president. The voice of that change, where female teachers began to be paid the same as male teachers. Equal pay for equal work, he termed it. I was probably about 10 or somewhere there, hearing that, not understanding the importance of it. It was about equity, and that stood out to me, the concept of equity from a gender point, which translated in my mind from a class socioeconomic point, which is what drove a lot of my own work later, is the economic equity, socioeconomic equity between the poor and the wealthy. As Sharon recalls, her father's words to her as a teenager helped to stir her lifelong interest in psychology.
I remember my father said this to me at 17. I had opposed something in high school, and he said this. He said, when you choose not to be part of the norm, you better be 10 times more qualified and 10 times more competent in whatever you're doing, because there's always a price you pay when you choose not to go along. I was 17 when he said that to me. But the most important part that drove my I would say, thirst for education was my passion for psychology. I love psychology, and that's why I always use every opportunity to thank Professor Diosaran, who was the first psychologist I knew here in Trinidad. And I thought it would have been most helpful for my country too, given the social ills that I saw at the age of 27 that we were faced with already. And I thought the psychology would serve well in helping with the social transformation.
Dr. Gopaul McNicol has practiced psychology at the highest level in the United States and even held the post of Assistant Director of Accreditation at the American Psychological Association. Today, she is an eminent author and psychology professor in North America and the Caribbean, and has served as an international psychoeducational socio-political consultant for the past 20 years. Committed to the social transformation of Trinidad and Tobago, she felt deeply motivated to become politically active.
First of all, when I made the decision to return home, it was after 15 years of doing research abroad, which included all of the CARICOM countries, looking at the educational, social, and community models that we needed to use to address the social ills in our society. After 15 years of research, the next step was to return home to begin looking at how do you implement those new models, relevant decolonized models for us. And the political arm was the politics is the highest form of social service in my mind. And I'm thinking the hard work was done. We know the right models now. It's just to get the politicians who are the policy makers, with a swipe of a pen and a press of a button, we can change the practices, the colonized way that we did, that top-down system that we inherited from colonialism. And so that's why I entered politics. It wasn't like I had an interest to be a politician. It was like, this is the way that you can address the social problems easily, being in the politics at the policy level.
With early exposure to the People's National Movement through the Youth League, it seemed a natural fit to return to the PNM.
You function like an MP, it's just that you're not going into Parliament. That's the main difference between an MP and an official MP and an honorary, as the PNM call it. I think the UNC refers to it as the shadow MP, same thing. And you did pretty much everything. You had a day full day at work where you go in and serve everyone in the constituency who needed help. And at the time, remember, the PNM was in government. So even though I was an honorary MP, it was easy to get things done because you just contact the ministers who were all PNM and they assist you. I did not see the PNM as instrumental in making that change because their concept of governing remained to this day a top-down system in terms of how they govern. And that's why so many youngsters are relegated to these URP programs. And I was against that. I really felt we needed to bring equity into the system. And so I developed what I call the ground bottom-up model of governing. Some people call it bottom-up, some people call it ground-up. And at the time, Mr. Dukran was the leader of the COP, and he welcomed this new idea of a bottom-up model, a ground-up concept. He welcomed it. And I was so excited because this is all I wanted to see happen in the PNM, which was let's bring equity, let's get our youngsters, let's lift them out of poverty, let's eradicate poverty and eradicate crime. And we did it in St. Joseph by taking 27 people off of URP, most of who were gang-related youngsters, helped them get their small businesses going. Some of it was music, some of it was cleaning contract, cooking contract. We did all of that. And today, 9 years later, only one went back to URP. None went back to the criminal gang life.
During her term as deputy leader of the COP, Dr. Gopaul McNicol seized the opportunity to use the ground-up model.
I went through every constituency doing workshops and trainings on the ground-up model, how it works in a constituency, how it works at the governance level, so that every ministry, how does a ground-up model benefit not just the ministry, but citizens as a whole. It was a great time being a deputy in the COP because you were heard, if nothing else. The people wanted and welcomed this, but somehow it still hasn't taken root. To create a strong government, you need an even stronger opposition. And so I felt that if the UNC and the COP come together, flush out their differences, look at their commonalities, with a new ground-up concept of governing and philosophy of leadership and so on, we can have a unified opposition that can take on the then government in the next election. And that's how Mr. Pandey he offered 2 seats, senatorial seats, to the COP, and had hoped that I would have accepted one because of my social expertise and so on. And I did, and that's how I became a senator. Sitting in the Senate with 5 UNC, and I being the only COP senator, was quite interesting. But what we saw, it was almost like a mini research, because what we saw is that we could work together. And what we also saw, even though I was a minority in terms of numerical preponderance, they having 5 and we had 1, it didn't matter. The voice, the policies of the COP took root during the time when I was in the Senate. The Children Authority Bill is actually the bill up to now. We have not really crystallized it, in that we keep hearing almost every new administration bring forward a debate on the Children Authority Bill, so to speak. It's about making sure that children's rights are pretty much established in law. You see, what is the problem is that we debate and then it stays there. You have to proclaim it into law. This is what has not happened to this day. There is no recourse legally if the laws are not proclaimed. And so it still remains an issue. And all the other bills that I debated, I must tell you, everything you would hear in the thread that ran through my responses were the ground-up concept. Even the water bill, the electricity, water and lights for all, the financial intelligence unit. So my contribution to any bill centered around how is it we can change that system that wasn't obviously working to benefit those who are vulnerable, whether be it children or the poor in the society.
Working tirelessly to bring about social transformation, Dr. Gopaul McNicol's achievements remain rooted in her commitment to community empowerment, interracial solidarity, and the preservation of family life.
I'm not impatient about the social transformation that has to happen politically in our country. I am hopeful that it will happen maybe in my lifetime, but if it doesn't, it certainly will happen in the next generation, because it will take time to bring about this ground up concept of which I speak. But I'm committed to constantly be a voice echoing that sentiment.